evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Our senators, well represented. Our former lieutenant governors, our former president of the legislature, former judges, former educators, parents, teachers, and all. This is a very historic occasion. We tried to plan this for a while, and it came to this. So you got to give yourself a great tap on the shoulder that this is the time. Historic. Why historic? We have never had this before. We have been allowed to participate in the nomination process. Very, very long time. And you know that this is very important. No one becomes the President of the United States without going through the nomination process, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. So this is very important to us in the territory. Although we don't have the right to vote for the President, this is a mighty important process. And I think to have the President, the former President, to come here is really say something. It speaks volume. I could recall the last sitting president that came was sometime February 27th of 1948, one by the name of Truman. And he claimed and declared after he left that this is the poorhouse of America. That is U.S. Virgin Islands. But today we have grown. We have grown. And today is with pride that we look back over the pages of our history and note the chronicle of events that ultimately get us to this point whereby we're all enjoying this beautiful place and living wonderfully. But it's not enough. We need to proceed and go further. With Hillary in place, I think we can do a fantastic job. All Democrats. I know we must do something about Mr. Trump. All right. We have the answer for Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is the point. He's been created by the Republican Party because of the extreme and destructive policies over the years. And that's their Frankenstein. But we in the Democratic Party we have the antidote to kill the Frankenstein. Come this fall, Hillary is going to do that. One of the reasons we have that is that we have the comeback kid with us tonight. He's here with us tonight. So we want to give him a big welcome. St. Croix, Twin City, welcome our president tonight. He's going to come on later. Before we go on, we want to take Donna, all of you know.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. We want to extend a warm welcome to all of you who, at a very short notice, turned out to welcome our president. I had the wonderful honor in his second term of working with him, and I will tell you, he always cared and continues to care about the Virgin Islands, and the same is true for Secretary Hillary Clinton. And she has a great agenda for us. Whatever you hear her talking about, we are all included. She understands that we are fully part of these United States and that we have served and given our lives along with other Americans to earn. And she has said that everyone, no matter where they live in these United States and territories, should have the right to vote for president, and she'll work with us for that. But I'm going to bring up a couple of people, and then I'm going to tell you what I need you to do for me. Because we have a couple of people to make an announcement. I'm going to bring up first our National Committee man, Emmett Hansen, to say make a brief announcement. Come on up, National Committee man.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to be long because you didn't come here to see me. What I want to tell you is that this is a great day, not because I'm here, but because you're there. I love the fact that you're here tonight and that you're excited and you're ready to make a move to make us a part of the United States. Thank you all for your support, and thank you for being here tonight. Oh, and I'm in full support of this campaign. We need you. We need all of you. Don't worry about whether or not we get the vote. It's been a thorn in my side. Those of you who have been involved know that. This is our best chance. This is our best chance. I want you to listen to me. This is our best chance. Do not squander it. Have a great evening.
Thank you. And now our Vice Chair of the Democratic Party of the Virgin Islands, Reese Richards, to make her announcement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. We're all fired up and ready to go. So who are we going to support? Hillary. Let's hear it. Hillary. Let us make President Clinton's visit here worthwhile. He has taken the time to come here, to be among us, to show us that our votes and our voices count. So let us all band together, call all your family and friends in the States and urge them to come out in droves and support the next president of the Virgin Islands. The United States. Yes. Hillary Rodham Clinton, and I, as a superdelegate, pledge my commitment to Hillary Rodham Clinton.
And now our National Committee woman, Carol Burke.
Good evening, everyone. I have a little story to tell, and I know I gotta be fast because we got better things to do up in here. 8 years ago, I was a Hillary superdelegate. I got a call from Barack Obama, then Senator Barack Obama, and he asked me to come his way, and I did. As you know, superdelegates can go this way or that way. Well, let me tell you something tonight. I stand here before you and the rest of the world as a superdelegate, totally pledged to Hillary, and nobody please don't call me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are you fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Fired up? We're bringing on our guest of honor for tonight. Is he ready? Oh, let me bring up first the representative of the Hillary Clinton campaign, the chair of the Caribbean Council of Hillary for America, out of Florida, Dr. Karen Green.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, St. Croix. Good evening. As part of the Caribbean, I want to say welcome in an island style. And so before long, because we're here, we're moving on a schedule. I'm so honored to be here, and I can only tell you that as island people, we know what we want, we know what we have, and we know what we got to do. Put your hands together and welcome your highest. At this point, I'm honored to be in the presence of your Congresswoman, Stacey Plaskett. Let us introduce her at this point, and she will be introducing our president this evening. Thank you all. We look forward to all the changes that we intend to have in supporting Hillary Clinton. Put your hands together and welcome your elected, your Congresswoman, Stacey Plaskett.
Good evening, Virgin Islanders. Thank you for the happy birthday. I just want to thank you, Karen, for that warm greeting from the campaign and yourself. We welcome you, our Caribbean sister, to the Virgin Islands. As your representative in Congress and presently the highest elected Democrat in the Virgin Islands, I have the distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the person who has traveled to our islands on behalf of Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, who is running to be the Democratic candidate for the office of President of the United States. As Virgin Islands residents, we are keenly aware that we do not have the right to vote for our president in November. I and others have been very vocal about this injustice. which is a bitter vestige of colonialism and to some extent racism that keeps the people of our territory from voting who we believe our president should be. But we have a say in who the candidate will be in November through our presidential primary, and we're exercising that right tonight. On June 4th, all Virgin Island Democrats can vote for which delegate will represent them and vote on their behalf in the upcoming Democratic National Convention. One thing that has become very clear during this presidential election is that the people of the United States must defeat Donald Trump. Donald Trump's positions and policies are an insidious virus infecting hatred and paranoia on what is still the greatest country in the world. For people like ourselves who are fighting for equal opportunity and inclusion, this is especially frightening. While we Virgin Islanders are demanding that we be given full rights and tools we need to grow our economy, Donald Trump is trying to isolate America and keep that dream from many. We don't need Trump making America great again, because America is already the greatest country in the world. That's why this July, I, along with superdelegates on this stage, will be casting our vote at the Democratic National Convention for Hillary Clinton. She is the most experienced, best qualified candidate to lead this country during this present time, with the necessary passion and commitment to serve all Americans, all people of the greatest country in the world. My support and my vote for Secretary Clinton has been based on the fact that even though she is the best candidate, she and her campaign still reached out and asked about the issues that mattered most to each one of us, to the Virgin Islanders, to Caribbean people. And my support came with her commitment to fighting to include us fully in the Affordable Health Care Act, to expanding service for our veterans, to give greater educational and economic opportunities for Virgin Islanders, and her written commitment to Virgin Islanders' right to vote for who we believe our president should be. Now I have the privilege to introduce the president, the two-term Democratic president of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton. But Mr. President, an introduction works both ways. And although I know you have been a friend to the Virgin Islands for many years, some of the people here today are meeting you for the first time. So let me begin by introducing you, Mr. President, to the people of the Virgin Islands, who next year will be part of the United States for 100 years. Mr. President, this is the most resilient, authentic, politically engaged people in the United States, a people who have contributed to this country even before we were a part of this country. The descendants of survivors of enslavement who are one of the only two peoples in the New World to gain emancipation on their own through overthrow of their oppressor. A people who fought to be part of the draft and willingly fight and give the ultimate sacrifice in greater numbers than any other American without voting for their commander-in-chief. A people who, aside from living in paradise, continue to enrich America through our talented young people again and again and again. Mr. President, I'm honored to introduce you to the people of the Virgin Islanders. Now, Virgin Islanders, you will next hear from a man who came from a very humble beginning, who is not only a leader of the free world, but also a scholar from Georgetown University, an Oxford Rhodes Scholar and a Yale Law School graduate, a man who became governor of Arkansas and who overhauled the educational system of that state. At 46 years old, he became the 42nd president of the United States and presided over the longest peacetime economic expansion in American history. His presidency leaves a legacy of creating opportunity for all Americans. During his 2 terms in office, the nation saw its lowest unemployment rate in modern times, the lowest inflation in 30 years, the highest home ownership in the country's history, dropping crime rates in many places, reducing welfare rolls. He also proposed the first balanced budget in decades and achieved a budget surplus. Such a list of accomplishments is enough for a decade or more, but President Clinton accomplished all of this in just 8 years, while also appointing an unprecedented, until now, unmatched number of African Americans in his cabinet. After leaving office, President Clinton has worked tirelessly on humanitarian issues and to support causes for those often forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Virgin Islanders, come on, big up. I am honored to introduce, as the representative of Secretary Rodham Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air,
Thank you. Whoa. Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't imagine we'd have such a wonderful crowd. Thank you so much. Hello, Virgin Islands. Hello, St. Croix. Thank you for making me feel welcome. Thank you, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, for your leadership and that beautiful introduction. Thank you, Party Chair Cecil Benjamin, and all the superdelegates and other leaders of the party who are here. The head of our Caribbean efforts, Hillary's campaign, thank you very much for coming from Florida. Thank you to all the members of the legislature and the other officials who are here. And I want to say thanks to former Congresswoman Donna Christensen for her efforts on Hillary's behalf. I'm glad to be back. And I'm glad to be, somebody told me I was the first president, sitting or former, to come to St. Croix since Calvin Coolidge. If so, it's been far too long. The others didn't know what they were missing. But Hillary and I did take 2 vacations on that other island, you know, when I was president. And we tried to be friends to the Virgin Islands. So I want to say a couple of things to set this election in its national and global context, and then how it relates to you in particular. You'll have to admit it's been an unusual election, right? In the Democratic primary and in the Republican primary. But it doesn't seem unusual at all if you look at what's going on all over the world. We need to start with a few facts, 2 big facts. Number 1, the United States started what was a global financial crash 8 years ago. In 400 years of recorded economic history where we have really good information, not a single solitary nation hit hard by such a crash has ever fully recovered in less than 10 years. Now, we got our jobs back in 7 years. But thanks to political gridlock, troubles in the world, and a lot of other things, only 20% of Americans after inflation have gotten a pay raise since the crash. And the median family income, the one in the middle, is, after inflation, about $4,000 lower than it was the last day I was president. That's a long time ago. I hate it, but it is. And so let me start by saying I personally believe the president's done a better job than he often gets credit for in managing a terrible economic situation and a difficult political situation in the United States and in a troubled world. The second big fact that is affecting growth and prospect and promise is all the turmoil in the world. It is by no means confined to ISIS and Syria and Iraq. We have the biggest refugee crisis since World War II in Europe. And the reaction has not been pretty. Some countries, Turkey, Greece, Germany, in various states of economic repair or disrepair, have done their best to be decent to these refugees. Syrians have deeply enriched the United States. The largest numbers live in and around Cleveland and just north of Detroit. But in a troubled time where people are worried about their own economic well-being, and, one terrible incident in Paris, another in San Bernardino, California, makes everybody on edge all the time. We see more and more people in Europe deciding that freedom and openness is too much trouble. And maybe they want to be governed like Russia under Mr. Putin, an authoritarian that controls the press. So the government of Turkey, a country of enormous promise and importance to us, has been moving in that direction. The governments in Hungary and Poland, two countries made free by many of you who served in the armed forces during the Cold War, moving in that direction. In Austria, the government just fell, moving in that direction. In Germany, by far the most prosperous country in Europe now, moving in that direction. The British are voting on whether they should get out of the European Union altogether. That has nothing to do with the refugee crisis. All over the world, people are facing the same choices now presented to the American people, although maybe in starkly more rude, often more vulgar terms, but it's still what's going on everywhere. Does our future lie in bridge building or wall building? Do we believe we should make America great again, which means go back to the way it was, even though the way it was wasn't so great if you were African American or Hispanic American or a first-generation immigrant or a woman or a member of the LGBT community or just somebody who was on the short end of the stick. Do you really want to go back to the way it was, or should we build an escalator to the future we can all ride on? Now, Hillary believes the future of the world lies in building bridges, not walls, bridges that have security checks, bridges that are not naive and foolish, but bridges nonetheless. And she believes the future lies in building escalators we're all riding on, not going back to a past that never existed. The other day I saw on television, after Mr. Trump gave his national security speech calling for lots more money for the military, a Greek American who had been the commander-in-chief of our NATO forces and is now retired and running a program at Tufts University in Massachusetts. So they asked this general, they said, or admiral, they said, what's your position on this whole military budget? He said, look, I was in the military for decades. We always want more money, doesn't everybody? And he said, we could actually use some more in very selected areas. But he said, let me remind you, we cannot kill our way out of this crisis. We have to build and work our way out of this crisis. Put it in another way, you can build all the walls you want. We could build that wall across the Rio Grande River. And, there are a lot of foreigners in Canada. We could build a wall across the Canadian border. I was in Oregon the other day. I said, we could put you to work for a week or two building a wall between Oregon and Canada. We could erect giant seawalls on the Pacific and the Atlantic. Then it wouldn't be so good for the Virgin Islands. We could send the whole United States Navy to the Gulf of Mexico to keep everybody out on the rest of our water border. And then we could put all the planes in the Air Force up in the air. You still could not keep out the social media, which is why I have been very proud of Hillary for being the most outspoken candidate, saying we are nuts to demonize Muslim Americans. We need them, because they love freedom and hate terror, to work to build a world where we're coming together and not being torn apart. When I was backstage just meeting people, I met at least 2 of you whose roots are in Palestine, in the Palestinian territory today. I always joke there are hardly any poor Palestinians outside the Palestinian territories. And if they had a fair chance to build their own life in a state next to Israel where we could live together and work together, it would be a different world. So if you want to build a world with more bridges and fewer walls, and if you want to build a world where we all ride on an escalator to the future together, that has special meaning for the Virgin Islands. Next year will mark the 100th anniversary of the transfer of this territory to the United States. It has been an unmixed blessing for us as Americans, but not always for you. And so I want to get 2 things out of the way first. Hillary strongly believes that we should do whatever is necessary to let people who are willing to serve this country and support it vote for President of the United States. Secondly, she strongly believes that you are suffering from part of what has bankrupted Puerto Rico, which is the unequal distribution of health care funds, and she wants to correct it so that you can be treated fairly and your people can have a decent chance at a healthy future. But that's just the beginning. I noted that there are movements afoot here to try to deal with both the opportunities and the perils presented by the warming climates, the rising sea waters, and the challenge that climate change presents to you. When I asked your representative of Congress if I should talk about it, she said, the young people care about it, the old people not so much. Now, alas, being one of the old people, I will tell you, if you're with me, you should care about it. If you care about your children and grandchildren, you should care about it. If you love the life you have here and you'd like your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to participate in it, you should care about it. If you would like to diversify the economy here, you should care about it because you're paying ridiculously high electric rates, which could be much lower if you finance an energy transformation. I did pass one solar farm on the way in. 4 years ago, the average price in the world of a megawatt hour, that's a bunch, of electricity was $315 from solar power. Today it's $99 in just 4 years. It'll soon be under 50. I was in a little school in eastern Kentucky that to me embodies the conflict we're facing all over America about trying to recover the past. It's on the edge of coal country. But this school is one of the space agency's satellites for nanotechnology research. And I was talking to a teenage undergraduate from eastern Kentucky while he put into a cube about 1.25 inches square and deep all the computing power to create a micro satellite that weighed about 6 pounds and cost $1 million. I never held $1 million in my hand before. But it was cheap because it can do most of what these big communication satellites do that enable you to fool with your cell phones. They cost about $400 million. So I asked this young man, I said, what's that little box made of that you're going to send up in space with all this computing power? He said, tungsten, and we made it with a 3D printer. And then he looked up at me and he smiled. He said, now, Mr. President, tell your wife not to take it when people make fun of her when she says we're going to put up 500 million solar panels in the next 4 years. He said, before you know it, we'll be making them with 3D printers. They'll be cheap as dirt, and I'll bet you she can double that, and we will all be free, and our power will be cheap, and we will be able to grow. When Hillary was Secretary of State, she spent a lot of time working with all the peoples of the Caribbean to try to develop a clean energy strategy that would liberate the whole region by driving down the price of electricity and removing some of the biggest threats to climate change. And this region should be the first in the world to be run 100% with clean renewable energy, because you have, in most places, the sun shines 300 days a year, and a lot of places the wind blows like crazy, and the battery power to store the energy when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow is increasing dramatically. It will change your future if we invest in it. This is why you should care who gets to be president, because otherwise anybody would invest the money. It's such a good deal. The problem is, unlike other electricity, 80 to 90% of the money has to be paid for up front. Then it's virtually free from then on, except for maintenance. So this is really important. It's also important, I've done a lot of work on this around the world. After the tsunami in the Indian Ocean, I worked for 2 years for the United Nations. And my foundation works in Central America and the Dominican Republic and Haiti, lots of other places, to try to build a clean energy future, but also to help people resist the worst ravages of climate change. And there are simple, not particularly expensive things that can be done that create a lot of good jobs.
Sunshine tomorrow, when I saints and sinners bleed.